Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and with hope you've had a satisfying lunch. One of the primary objectives of our conference is to cultivate a spirit of active research and encourage the sharing of knowledge that leads to the publication of academic work. This year, we are delighted to announce that, in collaboration with Emerald Publishing, conference participants are invited to attend a post-conference workshop covering the topics highlighted on the screen. To register for the workshop, please scan the QR code on the screen. Would anyone like to see the title of the workshop again? Please register via the QR code on the screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the SCLT 2024 forum titled Navigating the Digital Shift, Educator Strategies for a Future-Ready Education. With great pleasure, allow me to introduce the moderator of this forum, Associate Professor Dr. Marissa Maria Mahmud, Dean, School of Education, Sunway University. And our panelists, Professor Chai Lei Ching, Pro Vice Chancellor of Education, Sunway University. Mr. Chan Soon Seng, Chief Executive Officer, Teach for Malaysia. And T.S. Prida R. Govindasamy, Senior Lecturer, Sunway Foundation Program at Sunway College and winner of the National Outstanding Education Award at the Private Education Excellence Awards 2024. Over to you, Dr. Mahmud.
Sorry. Okay, test. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope lunch was good. Yes? Too good. Okay, I hope everybody has worked up an appetite for our session. But before we move on to something serious, let me officially introduce, give a little bit of context so that we can straight dive into what we want to discuss today. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Malissa. I'm excited to be your moderator today. I think it's not every day that we get the chance to completely rethink the future of education. But today is one of those days. We're living in a time where technology is reshaping the way we think, the way we teach, and the way we connect. But the big question is, are we ready to lead this transformation? We're not here to discuss small tweaks. We are here to talk about radical shifts and how we, as educators, need to be at the forefront of these changes. Because if we are not leading, who is? Today's session is centered around two key themes: the teacher's toolkit for tomorrow. What do educators need to thrive, innovate, and inspire in tomorrow's digital classroom? Ethical tech in classroom. How do we balance immense power of AI? We heard a lot about AI from Prof. Mega. Gamification and machine learning with our ethical responsibility to protect our students and also society. I am excited to be moderating the session together with the panels. We have such brilliant mind to be sharing a whole lot of insight and input. Professor Chai, Pro Vice Chancellor, Education, Employability and Alumni at Sunway University, Mr. Chan Sun Seng, CEO of Teach for Malaysia, and T.S. Prida, lecturer at Sunway Foundation. Let's give them another warm of applause. Right, let's dive straight into this, everyone. The future of our classroom is not going to be anything like it does today. Technology is rewriting the rule book, but here's the thing. Technology is not only powerful as a skill we equip our educators with. So what do those skills need to be? So my question here, esteemed panels, in a world where technology evolves by the minute, what cutting-edge digital skills should educators start be mastering today? And so that we can become the trailblazers of education, and as well in our classroom.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So to answer that question, Dr. Malissa, I think mastering digital pedagogy is one of it. And I believe we all been thrust into that during the pandemic, where we had to learn how to use MS Teams, Google Classroom, and so on. And today, it has become a part of our teaching and learning. And we use these platforms to do like interactive polls, quiz, interactive whiteboard, and all these actually enhances our teaching and learning and caters to today's students, Gen Z students, who are always with their gadgets and connected to technology. Secondly, I would say it would be an understanding about data and AI awareness. Why I say data? For instance, all of us, we use learning management systems. It could be Blackboard, it could be Moodle, and within these platforms, we have a lot of data about students' interaction. What are they doing on these platforms? And if an educator knows how to analyze this data, they can actually prepare more engaging lessons. And not only that, we can also identify students at risk from this data, from these learning management systems. AI awareness, it's very essential, but because today there's no escaping from using AI. We have to embrace it, whether we like it or not. And I think the government is doing a good job with AI for Rakyat, for instance, and SCG is supporting that and expecting all the staff to actually go for that. So no matter which age group the educator belongs to, these are all things that they have to take into consideration to prepare themselves and to basically capture the interests of students today.
Amazing. I think it is important for early intervention where the academics, are equipped with the skills where they can predict all the kind of struggles that our students are facing. What about at Teach for Malaysia?
Yeah, I think to the question sort of about the digital skills. First, hi everybody. It's good to see all of you. And we have a number of Teach from Malaysia alumni at Sunway that are here as well. So lovely to be here with all of you. You know, Malissa, I think that when we think about the kind of quote unquote digital skills that, you know, educators are going to need for the future, I'm going to kind of step back a little bit away from the traditional, what are like the specific kind of digital skills. So for example, you know, when we think about AI, the quality of output that you get is often related to the kind of prompt that you put in, right? And so now this new skill is like prompt engineering. How do we create the kind of prompts and blah, 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 right? So there are a lot of digital sort of technical hard skills, right? But I think that if we kind of step back and think about what we truly need as a skill to be able to use technology effectively, is really thinking back to what Prof. Dato Elizabeth was talking about in terms of the idea that we cannot lose our humanity in all of this. And Prof. Mega talked about it a lot as well, right? And I think the thing that will distinguish us as educators is our ability to understand how to use the technology to enable more humanized learning in the classroom. How do we understand how we are creating environments that enable our students to thrive, right? And that's thinking about, and so really shifting away from thinking about, okay, what are all sort of the specific technical skills, but truly thinking about what kind of learning are we trying to create in today's day and age, right? And how are we enabling students to access the kind of learning that will help them to leverage on and develop and leverage on the kind of things that make us uniquely human and enable us to add value in today's world, quote unquote, competing against technology, robots, and AI, and the apocalypse, right? I think that where that starts is first is, do I have a deep understanding of myself and how I show up in the world, right? Do I have a deep understanding of my human systems? Do I have a deep understanding of who I am as a person, emotions? And then do I have an understanding of how my students are showing up, or how they're relating to one another? And then how do I use then later on we get to this idea of how do I use the technology to enable us to be more human, right? So we were having this interesting discussion during lunch just now around the idea of AI being able to create music. So I was at a conference recently, and they had this closing video where there was like a song and that was written for that conference, and there was someone singing that song, and there was music playing, and the vice chancellor turned to me and said, "That's 100% AI generated," and I would have never guessed, right? But for people that truly understand, so I'm not a very musically sophisticated person, right? But for people who truly understand the art, who truly understand the music, who can understand the distinction of what is truly unique and creative, they will know, right? And so when we think about what the technology enables us to access now is, how are we then thinking about using it to leverage on the things that are distinctly creative and distinctly human? So all that to say is I think before we even think about the specific digital skills, we have to think about the things that are going to make us distinctly human and going to bring the distinct human value into society in the future. And that's how all of our education systems, learning, eventually will need to transform in order for us to, quote unquote, compete against AI and the robots.
My love is not
Your
being
mic
accepted.
doesn't love you.
Yes. I love it. For the third time. I think such a poetic statement, at the brink of technology is prevalent. Humanizing technology is really important. I really appreciate the point. Prof. Chai.
Okay, I think I do not want to repeat what has already been mentioned. Actually, we did have the panel discussion already during lunch, so we talked so much. So probably I want to bring our attention back to educators. Could I have a show of hand over here? How many of you are actually from the schools? Teachers from schools? Okay, how many of you are from college, university college? So just college, yeah. And how many from university? Okay, so we are all teachers, in a way. Of course, I know that some of you may argue with me. I'm not teacher, I'm a lecturer, or so on and so forth. But we are all educators. We teach in our classes. So how many of you have complained that I have too much work to do and I cannot cope? So this is something that I often hear from teachers every time when we have engagement with teachers, that I need to spend so much time preparing documents. I need to do so much to give to do assessment part, not just designing classes and courses, the pedagogical part of it, go into the classroom to teach and deal with student matters and do assessment. Not today, the assessment is not like those old days, 20 years ago. A, B, C, D, student go in, score, and come back. So machine can mark, or you could mark with your sheet, right? So to score all those. So we are moving away from the final examination, one-time assessment, decide your future of the students. We are moving very much into continuous assessment, which also means that increase the workload of educators, that you need to spend so much time to read your students' assignment, do that marking, give constructive feedback. So it may be okay, if you are dealing with a class of 20 students or 30 students, you could actually spend a lot of time, to really give that feedback, personalized feedback to your students. But today, as those probably from colleges or university, and even some of the schools, that you are dealing with big classroom. 100 students, sometimes you said 100 is too little, I'm dealing with 200 students. How do I deal with all of these? And other than that, I need to do a lot more research and so on and so forth. So how do I multitask with the current changes, in the way that we work nowadays? So I think one thing that our AI, the technology come in, it definitely is helping the educators to multitask, to do your work more effectively or efficiently. So, but the question over here is that how to leverage and to use this technology ethically, responsibly, and so in the way that you can actually still do your job very, very good, in a good way, in a good manner. So I think learning how to use this technology to help to do your work is the first thing as an educator need to learn. How could I use AI to now help me to generate rubric? I used to sit down in front of my computer, spend one whole day just to create one rubric that I'm happy, my students are happy. So with AI nowadays, you do not need to spend 10 hours sitting in front of a computer to create that rubric, because your main aim is not creating rubric. Your main aim is to use that rubric to guide your student to learn. So now you can actually have AI use that technology to help you create that rubric. Of course, you need to know how to use that AI to create that rubric for you, but not letting AI to determine how that rubric looks like. You need to determine it. So how to use it. And then you could actually spend those extra time, hours that you have right now, that you free up to do some other thing, to design how you want your activity to run, to fit in the purpose. So that's the first step, how to use those technology. What are those technology out there is available that you could use? So the second thing of it is that we talk so much about personalized education. You are facing a lot of students coming from different background, local students, international students from different countries, and all of them do come in with different background and different way of learning. So we want to diversify, like, in the way that we teach. We want to make sure that all of our students could actually learn in a safe environment at their own pace, that they pick up the things that you want them to learn. So, but unfortunately, we are in an era of information explosive era nowadays, that a lot of information are out there. So how do we want to now design our classes to put in all of this information in the way that your student will learn all these extra things? So how do you design that framework your student could now learn at their own pace? How do they gain information or knowledge from internet, from online information, from the AI? So these actually, the technology help you to do that. So every week, your class, say a 2-credit course, you probably only have 2 hours to talk to your students. They come into the class and you guide them in the learning, but they don't just learn in that 2 hours in the classroom. They need to learn beyond the classroom. So how you actually design and leverage on the technology so that your student could learn at their own pace. So how chatbot could now come in to answer your student question in the middle of the night. When you are sleeping, your students are learning, because that's the best time to learn to some people. So they suddenly learn, like, go through your lecture. I have something that I want to ask. I cannot wait until, like, I come to your class. I want to ask immediately, because this is the best time I learn. So how technology can come in right now, your student could learn. So AI technology would help, like, to make your education more personalized, so that everyone could learn in the way that they are comfortable with. So 2 things probably I wanted to highlight: the technology to help you to do your work better, and the second one, how you use that to help your student to learn better.
Thank you, Prof. Chai. I think it is amazing how AI now can assess the way we plan, our lesson to be really personalized. Just imagine if you could identify students who are struggling, and at the point when, let's say, conventionally, you would have to go through hundreds of essay, but using AI, at a get-go, you can not just identify students who are struggling, but you can personalize the kind of lessons which will then support their learning experience. I think it's amazing. Thank you, Prof. Chai. Right. We are not just catching up here. Okay, we are talking about how educators can lead the change, how they can shape the very tool they are using to teach. My next question, panelists. As we stand on, I must say, a revolution is happening now, technological revolution, especially within the space or the scene of education. How can educators not just keep up, but lead the change in innovating and redefining the learning experience of the student? You can share based, within the context of what you are currently doing now. You want to go first, Prita? Yeah.
I think it's very important that educators actually embrace lifelong learning. Yeah, all of us have different level of expertise when it comes to technology. And many of us have been teaching for many years, and we might be very familiar using a certain method of teaching. And therefore, if we are not an expert in a certain area, it's very important to go for seminars, training. And I think most of the educational institutions, they do put in effort to make sure, like, SEG, for instance, definitely we have all these training programs to equip our lecturers with the necessary skills so that we could actually impart it to our students in the right manner. So lifelong learning, and I think besides that, like my personal experience, I'm part of the professional learning and teaching committee. So we ask our educators to come forward and do sharing session between programs in pre-U, for instance. And I think that is another way to actually equip themselves.
I think just to add on to that point about lifelong learning, and for all of us who are teachers, the challenge with the lifelong learning, and I think, to be real, in sort of the Malaysian context, is really about do we feel safe enough to make mistakes? And I think as educators, oftentimes, we walk into a classroom and we feel like, we've got to kind of have it together, right? And we've got to like put on a good show and stuff. And I think that the reality about being able to adopt new technologies and be at the forefront of it is that we constantly have to experiment. And the only way we're going to be at that forefront is if we're trying new things. And when we try new things, we're going to make mistakes, and there are going to be things that don't work. But it can be really embarrassing to have 100 people in a room, you try something out and doesn't work, right? And so I don't know if you ever watched those technology, every time Google announces a new thing or Apple announces a new thing, and sometimes the technology doesn't work, right? And it's super, super embarrassing. But as educators, I think that if we want our students to develop growth mindsets, if we want to develop continuous learning, we also need to practice that and kind of embody that ability and be okay with being able to publicly fail. And I think that the other thing that Prof. Mega was talking about earlier is that DWO thing, right? The do it with others. And it's the idea that like actually we're gonna learn so much more as educators if we're learning from our students about how they're using the technologies, right? So my brother is a student at Sunway University, and I am fascinated to hear the stories about how they're using AI to augment their learning experience, but also there are very interesting stories about how they're using it to sort of navigate the system, which I will not say in case he gets in trouble.
I just want to add on a little bit. I think it's pretty much like, we are in the same direction. I really like Prof. Mega's idea of like, the DWO, do it with other. And particularly, I think I've shared this before. I mean, it's quite funny that when everyone asks me like, how do we want to do our AI education? Like, how do we want to teach our students how to use AI? And actually, to me, I really think that our students, they are way, way, way better than any of us here in using AI. And they are already like, in the pace of AI, like, they are so comfortable, like, with technology, with digital technology, with AI. And a lot of them, like, my nephews, like, are still in, secondary school, are already using AI, like, to do things. They create some systems, like, or something to work, like, in AI. So what I concern more, so as a Pro-Vice Chancellor of Sunway University, is that our teachers, how do they use AI, and how well do you know AI, and how comfortable are you with AI? So when we talk about teaching our student AI, who is going to teach the student AI? So all of you are going to teach your student AI. So to me is that how educators nowadays, whether you like AI or you don't like AI, you pro AIs or you are against AI, so we can't deny that AI is leading the way right now. To talk about student employability, a lot of companies, they want their employees to be able to use AI to perform their tasks more effectively. There's been study being done that students with AI background, like, knowledge, capability, like, to demonstrate the use of AI in doing things differently, are easier, like, to get a job nowadays. So to teachers nowadays, like, how do you want to facilitate your students in learning AI, integrating AI into all your lectures, into your discipline? So I think one way, of course, like, most of us, including myself, are born not with computer. So we learn to use computer when we are in probably primary school, secondary school, or even later in our life. Compared to the younger generation nowadays, they are born, I heard these people, like, told me before, they are born with handphone in their hand. So they have technology in their hand. So for us, all of us here, we need to put in extra effort to learn the technology to use AI. So how could we now keep up with our students, the knowledge and the level of AI is that we need to all come together, find that platform that we start to learn from each other also. Probably you need to learn from your students, you need to learn from your peers and colleagues to really form that support group to use, to implement AI in your teaching. You do not need to be ashamed that I do not know how to use AI, because a lot of people do not know how to use among us. So from that, I think support team, the university, of course, the institutions need to put in that effort to support the educators to pick up this ability, to use AI and the knowledge about AI. So I think that's something very important, university could provide that platform. Educators could come together, form that network or learning group, support group, whatever you want to call it, to learn and implement AI together. At the university, I think one thing that we are working right now is to come up with AI education framework that next year, that we will ensure that all of our educators in university will need to go through the basic AI literacy course training. So they need to know what is AI and how to use it before they could actually deal with students, how to integrate AI in their teaching and learning. So this is something I think basic, all educators, not just students, but educators must be trained on AI.
Wonderful. How are we feeling so far? Great. Okay. I think I want to turn the table to the audience. Right. Before we move on to the next theme, in the interest of time, I do have a whole lot of questions to the panel. But now that we have looked at the skill and stories of transformation, let's face the challenges head on. This is just a quick transition prior to the next theme. I want you to maybe look at a friend, okay, who is sitting next to you, very quickly. Okay, and listen carefully to this situation. Yeah. You've got a friend? Danny? Prof. Danny? Yep. Right, you have just, okay, are we ready? Okay, all ears? Right, you have just discovered that the AI tool your school or your university uses for grading is unintentionally biased against certain student group. You have 2 weeks before it is being implemented in exam. What do you do? Think for 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, I want you to share with your partner. Okay, I will repeat again. You have just discovered that the tool, the AI tool that your school uses for grading is unintentionally biased against certain group of students. You have 2 weeks, okay, to do something before it is being implemented. 30 seconds, think and share. Yes, this is an ethical part. Yeah. 10 more minutes, we don't have time. Just one more. Okay. Great discussion. Okay. Shall I bring your attention back to our discussion? I think this is a good exercise for us to move into the next theme, and that is on the ethical issues, which I think is really prevalent, and people are arguing and debating, okay, about the issue of ethics, especially with the usage of AI, right? So such similar situation may happen, perhaps at your institution. Right, panelists, are we ready? As AI and gamification redefine our classroom, what are the most pressing ethical challenges that our educators, all of us, need to navigate, and how they become champions of ethical technological programs if it is needed from your point of view? Shall we start with, okay, Prida, go ahead.
I think educators need to have an understanding about data privacy and security, because there's so many AI platforms out there, and some platforms, they may just steal data and sell it to a third party. It could be misused. So we really need to research on the platform that we're using. We just can't simply use it. And at times, we try to have we add our students into these platforms as well to use the tools there. So we need to first find out where does this data go? Is it safe? So don't just be so quick into jumping and trying on every single platform out there. Another thing, I would feel that ethics need to be also implemented in curriculum. So like I teach computer science and IT, and in our program, all the IT subjects, somewhere we do talk about ethics and technology. And I think my colleagues and I, we make a point to share with them the latest case studies, the latest happening, cyberbullying, or how AI steals your images or videos, and it could be sent to a wrong platform. I strongly highlight that because I know I like social media too, and our students are so into it. And I just want them to know that it is fine to use all these platforms, but use it responsibly, and also stay safe using these tools.
Prof. Chai?
Yeah.
Okay.
I probably use this one. I think we can't run away, from when we talk about AI, we can't run away from the fairness in the treatment, to all of our students. While we all recognize that, there are different levels of, AI literacy, and also, access to AI technologies, as we have mentioned. I think we discussed this a little bit, in the morning session during the keynote on access to AI technology, that all of students come from very different background. Some of the students may not have that exposure to AI, or ability to actually go for some paid AI that has higher function, or capability to do things. So if you are asking your students to use AI to do certain tasks, and that may create that type of unfairness, in the way that they may learn and use, the technology in doing their tasks or their work. So this is the first thing, so I think the educators need to take charge in deciding, really evaluate, the AI technology that you ask your student to use, to make sure that the technology itself is actually, accessible, to all the students you want your students to use. So to decrease, that unfairness, in the way, particularly if you want to use it, to assess your students' work you are assessing. So the second thing, when we talk about ethical use, we can't run away, from students use AI, ChatGPT to cheat in assessment. So how do we want, to promote that responsible use of AI? Well, on one hand, we want our students to really use AI in doing some tasks, to really know what to do, how to use AI in doing the task to increase the efficiency. On the other end, we are talking about, in any education systems, particularly, we have a way that we actually assess our students' learning, how well they have learned. Have they learned about, whatever they need to learn? And we do assessment to actually evaluate how well they learn, whether if they have achieved that level of learning. So remember, I think there's this part, I think there is no way, at least up until now, to use any, even turn it in, to detect your students using AI in writing their essay or assessment. So I think the accuracy is only up to about 70%, and it's not ethical for you to actually use it, like, to say, yeah, so this based on turning in, like, you are cheating with AI, because there's been many instances that we have shown that even if you are using Grammarly, like, any English grammar, like, tools to correct the English, so it may turn out to be very high in turning in that you are cheating, you are using AI, like, to generate that. So it's not really entirely accurate. So in this part, so how do you want to encourage, like, how do you want to limit the use of AI while still promote the use of AI? So I think that is the ethical part of it. Which part within your teaching you want to use AI, and how you want your student to use AI, and which are the assessment you must omit AI from it, because you want to assess, say, your students' ability to, say, your understanding of grammar. So then you cannot allow your student to use AI, because you are assessing AI at the end of the day, not your student ability to write English in correct grammar. So if that is your learning objective, then it cannot be the way that you want to use it. So I think, like, there are some part of it, I think the very, very popular, like, all discussing ethical issue of AI. To all the educators, of course, like, the cheating part is one of it. The second, ensure your student have access, like, to AI tools that you want to use, other than, I think, talk about the data privacy issue. And I think the next one, I think you touch a little bit about also, like, about creating that safe space, online safe space, like, particularly you are using all of this technology, like, in your teaching and learning. So I think that's something, like, extra to add on. Probably, I think she's have some extra.
Yeah, just the one thing that I'd add on as food for thought is when we think about AI and sort of like the cheating in our learning assignments or tasks, I think a question we might ask ourselves is, if the task is cheatable using AI, is that task a meaningful learning task in today's day and age? And the opportunity that AI is providing us, or wherever technology is leading us, is actually we can now assess students in a lot more meaningful ways than we could in the past. And we're so used to the very traditional, very narrow set of student outcomes that get assessed by, let's say, obviously the university is moving away from this, but from like examinations at the end of a course, right? Or your SPM, your CPM, and all of that. Those were designed because at the time we could, those were the tools that we had available to measure what we were trying to measure, but it's a very, very narrow skill set, right? It's just, and oftentimes those things are measuring a lot of like knowledge recall, right? As the world is evolving, as technology is evolving, and I know that the university is progressing, right? And is not stuck in this, you use a continuous assessment approach, you're not stuck in a singular high stakes examination. But in the Malaysian education system, where I spend the majority of my time, we're still very fixated on exam-oriented high stakes testing. AI provides us the ability to assess students a lot more holistically and to assess a broader set of student outcomes. And so we need to think differently about what we're actually trying to assess. And we need to shift away to shift towards more and more so assessments that are performance-based, that are authentic assessments, that are assessing a student's ability to add real-world value. And then AI can help us to more holistically assess what a student is able, a student is able to do beyond like But obviously there is still the value of the academic, building the academic body of knowledge and research, right? And so then all of the standards that we need to put in place to embrace AI, where we're able to cite AI, where we're able to talk about how we've used it, and the more open we are about those things, I think the more we're able to have the conversation to think about what are the frameworks and standards that need to be in place. But I think the key thing for us, the opportunity we have, is how are we reimagining the way that we assess students or provide learning tasks to students?
Wow. If this input have not incited questions from the audience, I do not know what will. Talking about questions, shall we open the floor? Shall we? Do you guys have any questions? This is the time.
We could use AI to answer.
Perhaps the volunteers can help to pass the mic. Any further questions? Prof. Danny.
Right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, panelists, for the discussion. I just let the ball rolling because I see everyone is shy to ask the first question, right? Okay. Thanks for the sharing. I think I've heard a very interesting discussion just now about the assessment and so on and so forth. We are now using AI, embracing AI, and how do we walk away from the new assessment method? I just want to have a quick question, because when we go into individual school, individual classes, that become a much easier because it's number of controlled samples or student number that you have. Now we're talking about, let's say, we want to enroll from the primary school to the secondary school, from one grade to another grade, and then the national level. So how do you think, because it become also a little bit biased when there are some teachers are a bit more embracing, some teachers are not. Therefore, we usually have this O levels, L levels, SPM, STBM, is to have a kind of a benchmarking and then to allowing to understanding whether the students are fit for the next level of progressions. So just trying to see what is your all view on this. When we come to the implementation on national or international level, come to L level is actually international. How do we transform the new assessment method that you should look into for us to somehow getting the benchmark or the minimum requirement for them to move on to the next level of education? Thank you.
Okay, who wants to take this?
Was that specific?
Looks like.
Okay.
I think, can I throw out a more controversial response to that? I then wonder, I mean, if we're thinking about really like what's the cutting edge and what is the disruption that the technology is bringing towards us, is the, you know, sort of current kind of like benchmarks, like let's say A levels, going, how relevant are those things going to be in the future? And I wonder if it's going to be more fit for purpose in terms of what a specific institution is looking for in what their students are able to bring to the table. I think that, and so that's my initial response to that. I think that there will always kind of be like a desire to have sort of standardized benchmarks across the board, but within those benchmarks, I think those will eventually evolve, right? So for example, in some way you have all the pre-Us that exist in the world, right? The CPU or the Canadian pre-U is very, very different to the A levels, right? And the way that it is assessed within those things are two very different levels, very different approaches, right? And I think that it is then upon the assessment body or to analyze or to consider what is going to be relevant towards the kind of knowledge and skills that need to be assessed or that will be demanded by employers, tertiary education institutions of the future.
Yeah, I think for this topic there will be a lot more, like, you know, we need to really sit down to really map. I do see, like, you know, AI literacy or ability, like, you know, to use AI if it is being designed carefully, like, you know, throughout the whole learning, I think, education process from primary to secondary to university level. It will be, I do not know, I think most of us Malaysians still remember, I think at our time, like, you know, in, I think primary school, you have the 3M. You must, like, you know, have, like, you know, master the ability, like, you know, to write, to read, or whatsoever. I think AI is something, like, you know, probably need to come in. There is a need. I myself also has been, like, you know, thinking and discussing this also in when should be the age that we start to teach and allow students to use AI in classrooms. Should it be standard 1? Should it be standard 2? So I think taking the idea, I think all of us go through that period of time, using calculator. So when we were in primary school, we are not allowed to use calculator at all. It's forbidden, because that's the time, that we need to learn about the ability, to do calculation by hand. We need to understand how mathematics work and so on and so forth. And when we enter into secondary school, we suddenly are allowed to use calculator in doing mathematics. So there is a level, how we want our students to learn. So to curate that carefully throughout the entire education is very important. So what is that level, in primary, students need to know about AI. They are being taught about, what are the ethical use of AI, how AI work, and so on and so forth, about data privacy, data, and then go into secondary school. Probably that will be the time that they start to do computational thinking, how algorithm work in AI, or so on and so forth. And after that, when they go into university level, there will be application of AI in their own different discipline. I think there are different levels. I'm not saying that this is the way. I'm saying, probably this is something that it should work. AI to be carefully integrated as one of the basic skill in our education, in which I think it should be a basic skill. So I think in terms of level, how it should put in, it will require all the educators and AI experts to come together to really design the whole pathway. So of how things should work.
I think we can also learn from our neighboring countries. I attended a AI summit, ASEAN AI summit, just a few months back, and I saw how different countries were embracing AI into education, and it was quite an eye-opener. So for example, access equity is an issue, and a digital divide is an issue. So you see, I think I heard from someone from Indonesia, for instance, they give prepaid internet access to students in a certain community, and they work with a lot of corporations to free laptops. I'm sure our government is also doing the same, but it was interesting to hear from other countries around us who may have the same challenges.
Okay, I think we don't have any more time. My timekeeper. Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Chai, Frida, and Mr. Chand. I'm sure that we have all benefited from their powerful insights. And to all of you, thank you very much for being part of this conversation. And I wish you the best for the next bit of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Chai Ching, Mr. Chan Sun Seng, T.S. Prida, and Associate Prof. Dr. Malissa Maria Mahmud for that very fruitful discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, sessions 2A and 2B of paper presentations will now commence. Kindly refer to your personalized conference schedules for venue information and proceed to your respective halls. Thank you.